This is the March 2023 edition of the Rethink Church audio magazine presented on the Compass Podcast. In this edition, we present the latest stories in one classic read from the Rethink Church website. Throughout March of 2023, our content focused on Lent and the resilience it inspires. In this edition, we'll hear What is Palm Sunday by Ryan Dunn, Lent, Fasting, and Revelation by Joseph Yu, Resilient Women in the Bible by Madison Myers, and What's Up with Churches on Twitch by Nathan Webb. Let's get into it. This is our March 2023 edition of the Rethink Church audio magazine. What is Palm Sunday by Reverend Ryan Dunn, read by the author. This Sunday is called Palm Sunday, which is April 2nd in 2023. The name comes from a story in the Bible in which Jesus entered the city of Jerusalem. Prior to this event, Jesus and his friends roamed the countryside teaching and performing miracles, gaining a lot of recognition. The people of Jerusalem were super excited that Jesus was coming to their city to celebrate a big religious festival. In their excitement, the people grabbed palm branches to wave around and threw their cloaks before Jesus on the road. The whole scene might have looked something like an ancient ticker tape parade. Today, we still commemorate Palm Sunday. It starts off a week of remembrance for Christians, which is often referred to as Holy Week. The week ends with the celebration of Easter. And throughout this week, we mark the different events that led to Jesus' resurrection and Easter. This means that Palm Sunday is a kind of paradoxical celebration. At worship services, there's likely a festive atmosphere. I've been a part of many services where children wave palm branches and parade around the worship space shouting, "Hosanna!" The paradox is that we celebrate knowing full well what came next in the story. After Jesus' triumphal entry, he was rejected, betrayed, and crucified. Just about everything in regards to Jesus was surprising. His teachings were surprising, sometimes in a refreshing way, often in a shocking way. His actions were surprising, evidenced in the people he often associated with. His entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday was surprising because he rode in riding a young donkey. The events of Holy Week remind us that we humans often don't deal well with surprises. For the story turns from celebration on Palm Sunday to rejection and death the following Friday. Thankfully, we know today that there was one more surprise to the Jesus story, the surprise of resurrection, which we'll celebrate on Easter Sunday. Easter is a reminder that though we may turn from God's surprises, God's love persists in an undeniable way. We can't keep God from surprising us. This Sunday is a celebration of wonder. We celebrate that God continues to surprise and are welcoming in the miracle to come, the miracle of resurrection. I hope you'll consider what surprises await you this Holy Week. Lent, Fasting, Hunger, and Revelation by Joseph Yu, read by the author.
I'm giving up being nice to my siblings for Lent, a youth student declared emphatically. Well, if she can give up being nice, I'm going to give up doing homework, another chimed in. Ooh, I'm going to tell my parents that I'm giving up chores for Lent because the church said it's a good thing to do. And that's when I knew that I had incredibly messed up. For years, we talked about giving things up for the Lenten season, but I realized I never really talked about the why of the seasonal fasting. At best, it was treated like a short diet plan. No chocolate, or no soda, or no coffee. And at worst, and this moment with my youth kids was as bad as it could get, fasting became a scapegoat to not do things you should be doing. One of the reasons why we give things up for Lent is to sit with our hunger. For the majority of us reading this, we often don't allow ourselves to sit with our hunger. We don't need to. In fact, we complain when our hunger isn't satiated in a timely manner. Everything is seemingly readily and quickly accessible. And the hunger I talk about goes beyond just food. We get annoyed when there's a slight lag in the videos we're watching on our phone. Amazon's Prime 2-day delivery sometimes doesn't seem quick enough. We get a little agitated when we mobile order our Starbucks while 5 minutes out and it's still not ready when we arrive to pick it up. So the Lent season offers us an opportunity to sit with our hungers. We give something up to learn what the hunger reveals about us. What is the hunger beneath the hunger? And who or what or where is God when I am hungry for something I desire? Is it God the Creator that will sate this hunger? Or is it money, fame and popularity, relationships? What is your hunger teaching you about yourself and your dependence on God? And here are some Lenten practices I have engaged in throughout my life that help reveal things about myself and God. Silence. This Lent, I set aside 15 minutes of being in silence daily. It's really easy for me to be silent, a side effect of being an introvert. However, not having any intentional noise around me has been a lot more difficult than I anticipated. I often would spend the first 15 minutes of a walk without music in my ears and without talking. After a few minutes, I felt the urge to talk to myself out loud just to add some other noise around me. Why is it so difficult to be in silence? So far, the biggest thing this short period of intentional silence has taught me is to be aware of God's presence. Sometimes I focus on so much of my output that I may miss the input from God. Being still and silent helps me to edge closer to hear the still small voice of God. Fasting. Sometimes I've fasted from meals, other times certain medias. There are times where I've abstained from particular foods, like coffee. This was the easiest to discern what the fast was teaching me. Christians don't live on bread alone. Fill in whatever your context is for bread. During the season I gave up coffee and that caffeine headache came roaring in, it really made me question if I was more dependent on coffee or on prayer. Why can't it be both? The physical hunger pangs made it easier to be reminded that ultimately my dependence is in God, that I'm made whole only in and through God. Prayer. Most Lenten seasons, I like adding a discipline rather than taking something away from my life or plate. Some seasons, I add intentional times of prayer. It's similar to taking time for silence, but noise is involved. Instead of scrolling mindlessly through social media or watching something on TV like I normally would do in that time of space, I turn it towards prayer. This intentional time of prayer reminded me that I don't need to be entertained every waking moment of my life. It helped me recenter myself and be reminded of what actually are the priorities of my life. But most importantly, it taught me that I am not God. God is God. Intentional and random acts of kindness. Last year, I set out to bless someone, anyone, every day. Michael Frost in Surprise the World described blessing someone as adding strength to one's arm. This means leaving someone slightly better than when we first encountered them, helping them to breathe just a little bit better. So I decided to be a small blessing in people's day. Take a friend out to lunch, pay for a stranger's coffee, put my neighbor's trash bins back after the trash was collected, send encouraging and affirming letters, anything and everything. It was a practice of embodying Mother Teresa's quote, "Do small things with great love." I mean, what is one of the surest ways to show my love for God? To love my neighbor. The biggest takeaway from that season was I can always afford to be generous. So what are some of the revelations you are discovering in your Lenten disciplines this year?
Article title: Resilient Females in the Bible. March is Women's History Month. As I spend this time reflecting on the powerful women who have made an impact on my life, I also want to reflect on 3 women from the Bible that inspire us today. Miriam. I think it is safe to say we can all recall the story of Moses, the deliverer of the Hebrew people. However, do you recall the story of Miriam? Miriam played an integral role in saving the life of Moses. In the history of Christianity, Miriam is the first woman to be a prophetess. It was her bravery and faith that changed the course of history. We can thank Miriam for saving Moses' life. When Moses was born, the current Pharaoh ordered the death of all newborn Hebrew boys in order to reduce the Israelite population. In Hebrews 11:23, it says that Miriam helped her mother Jochebed hide Moses for 3 months. It got to the point where they could no longer hide Moses, and Jochebed placed Moses in a basket and set him afloat through the banks of reeds on the Nile River. Pharaoh's daughter found Moses in the basket and asked if there was a Hebrew woman to nurse him. Then Miriam fetched Jochebed, Moses' own mother, to nurse him until the Pharaoh's daughter could take care of him. Moses leaves a big imprint on the Old Testament and also wrote the 10 Commandments that were by God for the Israelites. If it wasn't for Miriam's bravery, our history would look a lot different. Esther. Esther was the Jewish woman who became a queen alongside the Persian king Ahasuerus. Esther embodied the virtues of humility, beauty, courage, and intelligence. She used her position for good. As the book of Esther recounts, her people were on the edge of being annihilated, yet Esther selflessly risked her life to save them. Esther's uncle Mordecai refused to bow down to Haman, the king's chief minister. As a result, Haman plotted the massacre of all Jews. At the time, Haman did not know that Esther was a Jew. Esther was very quiet about that. Haman also did not know that Mordecai was Esther's uncle. In order to save the Jews, Esther ordered a fast for 3 days and 3 nights. In those times, no one was allowed to approach the king in the inner courts without being summoned. If this rule was broken, the result was the death penalty. Yet on the 3rd day, the king summoned Esther, and she found favor in his eyes. This time with the king allowed Esther to persuade him not to annihilate the Jews. The king loved Esther so much that he offered her half of his kingdom, but Esther requested only that her people be spared. Eventually, the Jews were spared, and Haman was hanged. Also, his estate was gifted to Esther. Esther did not force her power. Esther's sacrificial love for her people shows that not only was she a good queen, but also a liberator. She used her power for good. Esther's traits of humility, sacrifice, and wisdom are what makes her one of the most influential women in history. Lydia. Lydia worked in a male-dominated Roman industry. She ran a successful business selling purple fabric. Lydia was well connected in her trade. The Bible tells us that Lydia brought her whole household to Christianity and hosted Paul and his friends in her house. This allowed them to spread the gospel more effectively and shows Lydia's bravery. In this story, Paul and his friends had just been persecuted. It would not have been good to be seen with foreign men, and Lydia took that risk by welcoming them into her home. I think Lydia's legacy really speaks to the modern-day woman. She is a biblical example of a successful female entrepreneur. Though these 3 women in the Bible had a big influence on our history, there are many more women in the Bible who have also had a great legacy. Who is a female biblical character that speaks to you?
Title: What's Up with Churches on Twitch? It feels fair to say that a form of ministry becomes settled into a normative place in culture when it gets featured by the Billy Graham Evangelical Association. Recently, a podcast was recorded highlighting a friend of mine, Bubba Stallcup of Love Thy Nerd, a nerd culture outreach ministry. They practice outreach in many forums, including conventions, podcasts, and Twitch. If Twitch churches and ministries have reached the level of household fame that they're getting the attention of such mainline institutions, then it's clear they're around to stay. But what are they? What's going on with churches on Twitch? Subhead: What is Twitch? First off, what even is Twitch? It's a live streaming platform with a recent count of 31 million daily active users, but it's a bit different than other live streaming services out there. You can learn about the full history of its evolution from its start as Justin TV to its current iteration of Twitch on streamersplaybook.com. But the key factor is that Twitch found itself as the preferred streaming platform for video game players and has since grown to many niche interests and hobbies. Unlike its competitor Facebook, Twitch is not mainly focused on the social media element. It is mostly divided into the streamer and the viewer. The streamer will go live throughout the week, and viewers will watch and engage with the chat box, the streamer, and their fellow viewers. Twitch is also notably different from another competitor, YouTube, in that it isn't built out as a search engine and prides itself instead as a creator-focused platform with fairly low barriers of entry for monetization. Subhead:
Why Twitch? What is it about Twitch that is drawing ministries to it? I can speak for Checkpoint Church, the church plant I pastor that is heavily present on the platform. Put simply, it's where people are. For Checkpoint, we see Twitch as serving the same role as the coffee shop in traditional church planting. Just like the pastor going to meet new people at the local hotspot, Twitch is where the internet-based pastor ventures to meet new people. There was a notable shift in the dynamic of how churches were reaching new people with the pandemic. Many of those with a focus on younger and more tech-interested people found Twitch to be a valuable meeting spot. Subhead: It's all about engagement. Another notable perk of Twitch are the community features. Much of the excitement of Twitch isn't found in the streamer themselves, but in the way that the viewers are able to interact with the stream. Nearly every stream has a host of custom emoticons that allow the viewer to have a unique experience. There are also points awarded for time watched on each stream, and often viewer-focused streams will have redeemable rewards that enhance the experience. For instance, we have a reward at Checkpoint that allows the viewer to open a mysterious capsule from our Gachapon capsule machine, and another that requires me to remove my glasses for 5 minutes while playing a complex game. There are even games that are custom built for Twitch's interface that allow for the viewers to modify the gameplay experience live. The viewers can compete against each other in marble races, or punish the players with onslaughts of enemies in a modded version of The Legend of Zelda. Subhead: Sharing is caring. A final perk of Twitch is the culture that has been established in this space. While there are millions of streamers active on the site, there's a sense of camaraderie that even our connectional United Methodist Church should covet. One way this is exhibited most profoundly is in the raid feature built into the platform. Whenever a streamer decides to end their live stream, they're able to select another streamer who's currently live, and then they can send their viewers digitally to that stream to support them. At Checkpoint, we use this feature to send a cavalcade of viewers bearing our motto, "You Matter," to the chat box of other streamers to encourage them, even if they're not Christians. This kind of community sharing is normative and almost expected of those that participate in the culture of Twitch. Subhead: But how? The elephant in the room from the above information is likely this question: but how is this church? What is the ecclesiology of any of this? I'll list below just a few of the varieties that I've become acquainted with over the years. Ecclesiology: the study of doctrine pertaining to the church itself as a community or organic entity, and of how the church understands itself. Some, like the aforementioned Love Thy Nerd, don't make the claim to be a church, but instead view themselves as a kind of missionary-centered outreach ministry with the express goal of augmenting faith, not substituting for a worship experience. There are many that aren't organizations at all, but are instead individual streamers like Jate Live, who often define themselves as digital missionaries with the express goal of reaching unbelievers and providing a safe haven online. Still others, like Checkpoint Church, use the platform as our form of evangelism, pointing those that we meet at our coffee shop to a community-building platform like Discord for further opportunities for worship, discipleship, and community. Some, like Methodist Gaming, use Twitch as an auxiliary outreach for their physical church presence, Discovery United Methodist in Virginia. Or another in our Methodist connection, Crossfire Faith and Gaming, who are hoping to create an inclusive and faith-based community online. Recently, a new ministry started called SavePoint that hopes to serve as a connecting point between the physical churches and those gathering online. Their goal is that those finding faith online will get connected with physical church communities for continued and perhaps deeper discipleship. As one can tell, there's no shortage of iterations of an ecclesiological structure in Twitch ministry. After 3 years in this space, I could recount dozens of other fascinating forms of ministry I've seen online. I'm fascinated to see how the Spirit continues to work through these technocentric ministries.
Thank you for spending time with this. I truly hope it was informative and inspirational for you. The Compass Podcast and Rethink Church audio magazine are productions of United Methodist Communications. All the material presented here also appears on the umc.org website, so if you'd like a written version, please look up these articles on the site. The easiest way would be to go to the show notes page for this episode, or you can search by the author name. Normal episodes of the Compass Podcast come out every other week, and we'll have another edition of the audio magazine in April of 2023. We'll talk to you soon.